We're officially in the second half of the legislative session, and lawmakers at the Indiana General Assembly are picking up the pace again after taking a mid-session break. A quick count shows just over 150 Senate bills approved and sent over to the House, while nearly 180 House bills have cleared and moved to the Senate. The proposed measures changing chambers include, among other things, a proposed two-year budget bill, property tax reform, measures on health matters, veterans benefits, small nuclear reactors, cemeteries, and cigar sales. Our guests covered this legislative waterfront next here on Primetime. And good evening, I'm Bruce Haines, and with us are today, it's a pleasure to have 16th District Republican State Senator Justin Busch and 83rd District Republican State Representative Judy, and we invite you to share your questions and comments throughout our live program. Just call the number that you see on the screen. Again, Senator Busch, Representative Judy, Justin, and Chris.
Good evening. Thanks for having us again.
And there they are.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Our pleasure. And let's begin. We're starting the second half, but if we were up in the broadcast booth around the 50-yard line, we'd talk about the action in the first half. How has the first part of the session been for the state of the session, if you will?
Yeah, we kind of came right out of the gun there. I think it's been a really quick session for us. We have a lot of bills that were flowing on both sides, and now we're going to take on all the House bills, and we've sent all our bills over to our friends in the House.
Yeah, same with us on the House side. Mostly it's been with Ways and Means sitting on that committee, passing out our House budget, which is about a $47.2 billion budget, 46% of that going to K through 12, another 22% going to Medicaid, which is, again, a growing concern of the increased cost of Medicaid going forward.
Yeah. I was going to focus in on that because that is, if you will, job one. There are so many pieces of priority legislation, like the first 8 to 10 or so bills in each chamber. But key of it all is if the spending plan isn't in place, people will notice it by its absence. But within this one, you have a variety of things with which to work, and wondered from your perspective what it was like in Ways and Means over that first half to craft what the Senate's looking at now. Yeah,
it was actually a new experience with a new administration coming in, the Brown administration, with new folks running the agencies. So really looking at they were looking at efficiencies to cut certain agencies to save fiscal money, because we're only looking at about a 0.3% increase on that second year as far as revenue. We'll get that further revenue forecast in April that will kind of solidify the budget. But it was good overall. We sent pretty much a bare budget over to the Senate, and that's what Senator Busch and the rest of their team over there will be working on.
Yeah, let's spend at least an extra 30 seconds on that. The importance of that April revenue forecast. What does it give you that we don't have right now?
It gives us a more solidified vision of what those revenue forecasts are going to be for 26 and 27, and really dictates what we can fund and what we can't fund.
Got it. Well, and while that plate is spinning, other plates that also are going around represent an effort at property tax reform. At last count, there is a Senate, a gubernatorial, and a House committee property tax relief plan. Each has its differences, but they seem common on this one point, that all property tax dollars are spent locally. And it seems to be, from colleagues, we hear that this is a point that maybe is not well understood, that this is not state spending property tax money, but property tax reform helping to put the mechanisms in place. Let me use that as a toss-up question. Justin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, you bet. Senate Bill 1 is the bill that we were sent over to our friends in the House that dealt with this. And as you said, these are really what we are as tax collectors, if you will, on the Senate side, or in the state side, rather, as we send that money back to the locals. So Senate Bill 1 really focuses on giving relief to seniors that are most at need. They're living paycheck to paycheck, so 65 and up, disabled veterans, and I think there's also some carve-outs for those that maybe are first-time home buyers, in their 20s. We're trying to save as well. So we're trying to give some of those reliefs also to farmers. We've tried to look at some relief for them as well. Their taxing structure is a little bit different. It's more an average over a 5-year period for them. But we do understand there are some Hoosiers that are hurting. It's interesting, though, I did some surveying on this, and I had a large portion, almost half of my electorate that said they didn't want to have anything at all when it came to any kind of relief for property taxes. So it's been different district by district, but I think there's definitely some Hoosiers that are hurting that we're going to try to alleviate some of that pressure for.
And Chris, from your perspective.
Well, we had a 9-hour testimony on the Senate Bill 1 2 weeks ago on the Senate's version, and then this week we took testimony on House Bill 1402 as an amendment, which is the House's version of property tax relief, which actually looks like at a longer term, a kind of a 5-year term of instead of being tax levy driven, really being at a tax rate driven process. So as we move forward, you're going to see probably a mixture of what the governor wants, what the Senate wants, and essentially what the House wants. And all of this is going to work its way out. We probably won't vote that bill out for probably another 2-3 weeks out of Ways and Means. We're going to take a lot of testimony from constituents, from schools, from local governments, and we'll find the landing spot.
Still a lot of moving pieces when I talk to constituents that want to talk about that bill. It may not look the way it looks right now. There's a lot of discussions that still have to have with a half a session left to go.
Oh, yeah. And again, back to the spinning plates analogy, there are at least a half a dozen of those that are all dedicated to various health matters. And several of these have been pieces of legislation you've both been working with. Justin, among those that are working through the legislative process, Senate Bill 3, fiduciary duty in health plan administration. What does that mean?
Yeah, so the majority of Hoosiers will go ahead and get their insurance from their employer. And actually, Indiana is very unique where we have almost 80% of our employers are taking that risk on their own. So they're inherently taking that risk, and then they're going out and trying to find someone to help them, consult with them how to pick the best plan and also how to administer that plan. So out of the top 5 big insurers that have the majority of those plans on the market, we're saying to them, you have a fiduciary responsibility to make your shareholders as much money as possible, and a lot of them are very good at doing that. But if I'm going to hire you as my business and be the one that's going to be looking out for me, then you should have a fiduciary responsibility to me to not put the profits of your company over consulting mine. And as we see those prices continue to rise for healthcare costs, that's where it's not opening a new location, not having innovation, maybe paying your employees more. A lot of that money is being sucked out of there by the big 5 insurers.
Yeah. You're the author of SB3, and what is the prognosis of it all at the moment, or the state of the patient in the House?
I'm very proud to say that the bill passed out with bipartisan support, almost unanimously out of the Senate. And we sent that bill over to the House, and we continue to have negotiations and talk with experts across the country to see if we can relieve some pressure. And it is a bill that I believe is really going to hit Hoosiers in their pocketbooks and save us some money when it comes to the rising cost of care in Indiana spiraling out of control.
Your legislation addressing physician non-compete agreements, there is a version this year, and folks might think that they might have heard this about 2 years ago, and the answer is yes.
They did, yeah.
And compare, contrast the 23 legislation to what's going on in the 25 bill.
I'll even take a couple more steps back. 6 years ago, Judy and I actually filed to end doctor non-competes and never got a hearing for a few years. So we're very persistent, and it's back again now. So doctors in Indiana, a lot of those folks are, when you say non-compete, they complete their contract, and then basically the employer, the hospital, comes in and says you can either take this new contract or you can leave. And those non-competes are usually predicated on time, so it could be up to 5 years or 50-mile radius around the hospital. In 87 of Indiana's 92 counties, we have a severe doctor shortage. So what those folks are doing is they're taking their practice and they're leaving the state. Or some of them maybe will move to Lima, Ohio, and people will drive that way to see their doctor that they have a relationship with. So if you can, there's no non-competes in lawyers, but we definitely think that having that with doctors now is going to be able to have that relationship. And also I think by passing this kind of legislation, it lets new doctors who are looking for a new place to live that Indiana is open for business.
SB3 is authored by Justin and sponsored by Chris in the House. What connects you with it?
Oh, you're talking about the physician non-competes?
Yeah.
Yes. So again, personally, I had my personal doctor actually had to move and practice near Taylor University for a year to outweigh his non-compete.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Along with, I've had a couple of friends that are surgeons that have actually had to leave the community to continue to work elsewhere. One moved back to Florida, another one moved to Ohio. So we've lost great young talent here in this community, and I think this this bill is going to solidify those. Once you get folks here and they get to experience Northeast Indiana and how much they love it, want to stay here, those are the folks we want.
Another health care bill before the House Committee on Insurance is SB 480, but the two little words we've all experienced at some point, prior authorization. What can you tell us about this bill that you've co-authored?
Yeah, a prior authorization is, what we want to do is we want to put that power into the doctor's hands when it comes to your care, to not have the go ahead and get those authorization, but to have those doctors the ability to have the kind of test they think that's going to get you healthy. And I know that Dr. Tyler Johnson, doctor from our area up here, has worked really hard on that piece of legislation. Is really part of a package we believe is going to deliver better care at a more affordable price.
And on that notion of it being a part of somebody's benefit plan, we all concerned about our medical benefits and just benefits in general. Chris, you have a bill described as an assistance in obtaining veteran benefits. This is House Bill 1670. What's going on there?
Yes, so right now we have certain entities that are taking advantage of our veterans when they're trying to help them with their benefits. So right now a veteran can go to their county veteran service officer, they can go to the VFW, American Legion, AMVETS, and have this done at no cost. There are times when veterans decide to go outside of those entities and pay someone for that assistance. And that's where they're being taken advantage of. They're being told that they're going to be guaranteed increases in their service-connected disability. They're being told they're going to get a guaranteed increase in their pay. What this bill does essentially puts guardrails around that and says that you can only charge no more than 5 times the monthly amount increase or up to $12,000. This is language that is passed in Louisiana. It's over in the Senate now with Senator Baldwin, who's a veteran, sponsoring that bill. So we'll see how it moves forward.
Wow. Yet one more health care bill, and there are others beyond these, but it is certainly a force within this legislative session. Some of them branded by maybe it's workforce development or it's education or it's climate, but health care is certainly prevailing and pervasive, as well as all the discussion regarding the management of Medicaid. But I'm thinking here of a measure addressing physician referrals and reimbursement rates. This is an interesting one, but it needs a little preamble.
Yeah, it's actually in federal code right now. What it says is that a hospital system cannot incentivize a doctor to make a referral financially. So if you want to go ahead and keep that in network and we're both doctors, I would say, you have to go see Bruce now, even though maybe you're not the best doctor that's going to be for the patient and the affliction that they have. But I'm going to receive a financial kickback if I make that determination, make sure it comes to you. So we heard this wasn't happening, but there was a hospital system in central Indiana that broke this law to the tune of defrauding the government almost $500 million. So what this measure does, it's very difficult when whistleblowers have to move forward to the federal government. They have to name who they are. This will allow folks that say that this is happening. If it's here, you can reach out to the Attorney General's office and he can launch an investigation to see what's there, to bring the feds in there. I mean, it was really egregious what happened. There were tests that were, being ordered that the patient didn't need. So for me, a lot of these bills is putting patients over profits. And this is one saying that we know this is happening in Indiana and the state's watching as well. So do the right thing.
Yeah. We are on Primetime this evening with State Senator Justin Busch, State Representative Chris Judy, and we are live in studio and happy to take your call. You see the number on the screen. We have an offline question from Fred, and it goes like this. This just put up. Fred, thank you for checking in. He says, I am opposed to partisan school board elections. Have you considered taking into account the testimony of Northwest Allen County Superintendent regarding SB 1? So there it is.
Absolutely. I mean, I've spoken to almost all my superintendents about several different bills. There was a bills that dealt with charter schools that we talked about. We talked about SB 1. And one of my things I do when we're done with session is really make a round through all of our superintendents. So I know that you've been in touch with folks too, and we love those text messages and phone calls that come from the folks actually back home. Understand what SB 1 looks like right now. Like we said, there's a lot of work to be done, but I think when you look at the fact that how that's going to affect the locals in the school districts is something that I think that weighs heavy on our hearts.
Yes, I think I know what he's talking about. When in Ways and Means, we were talking about debt services, and I asked the superintendent, their $22 million of debt services covered by property tax, and where does that debt service come from? And where it's coming from is the growth of Northwest Allen County, the amount of homes that are being built, and they're having to build new schools, add on to the high school. So I think, yes, we're taking all of that testimony into consideration when we finally craft what Senate Bill 1 looks like.
Fred, thank you very much. And if you'd like to join us, again, check the number at the bottom of the screen. Give us a call. We appreciate it. Chris, you authored a measure clarifying what is required to be included in child custody orders.
I did.
It's a different kind of legislation. Walk us through 1626.
Yes, so this is a compromise that has came about with the Bar Association over the last 6 years. Many of my colleagues and I have introduced bills when it comes to co-equal parenting, 50-50 co-equal parenting. What this bill actually does is says that those facts and findings now have to be on those finalized custody orders. Currently, through Trial Rule 52, either party can request those facts and findings, and if that doesn't happen, the trial judge can release as little or as much as they want on those facts and findings. What this bill does is just codifies and says, hey, within those 4% of those custody cases that are disputed, and even less where those findings aren't released, you now have to release those.
Yeah. I had it told to me at one time that a lot of legislation is born out of real world experience, and
Yep.
and this is the condition under which we go forward to see about either remedy or repair or prevention, going forward. And in one case, again, you both overlap, so we appreciate your comments on House Bill 1585. This is cemetery perpetual care funding, and I believe also involves veteran-focused nonprofit cemeteries. Tell us what's going on with this piece. This is interesting.
Yeah, this was born out of, there's the Veterans Memorial where we have I believe it's a 3/4 the size of the Vietnam War Memorial that was placed out off of Bass Road. I believe now they have the Korean Memorial there and some other things. So the kids that maybe can't go out to DC get to be able to see that here, but veterans have really taken to it and removed to be there with their fellow veterans. So this is a bill that we've been working on over for 2 years now to find a way to have a columbarium, which is, you think about folks that are cremated can have their ashes interned into a cement wall there where they can be by that memorial and their fellow veterans. So we had to cut through a lot of red tape and find some legislation where it's not technically a cemetery. There's a lot of rules around that, believe it or not, and it took us there. So we're excited to probably move that across the finish line. I know that Representative Judy has been part of this as well. And I think it's really going to make a lot of veterans happy to know that they can remain there forever with their fellow soldiers.
Yes, most definitely. And if I can make a plug for the Veterans Memorial out there, if you haven't made it out there yet, please go out there. They have a replica of the Vietnam War Memorial, a replica of the Korean War Memorial. It's just and a whole history of the military out there. So I encourage you all to go out there and visit.
Absolutely. No good segue to this one, but on a different note, film and media production tax credits has brought you both together around Senate Bill 306. Tell us, it's lights, camera, and Indiana on a big screen, I guess.
We both of us have been a part of this for a long time. I think it was 5 years ago we introduced some legislation that dealt with this. And really what this is having people come to the Hoosier State as they film movies. A lot of times we'll watch our favorite program and you can see that Georgia peach and what it's meant to Georgia, the billions of dollars that it's brought there. So we have a framework in place now where folks can film here. And it's, we've had a few, there was, I believe it was maybe a Hallmark Christmas movie that was filmed here last 2 summers ago. And everyone always compliments about the people just walking down the street and saying hello and how fun it was to be at a Tin Caps game. So the more folks we can have here experience Indiana, we also have a gluttony of talent when it comes from behind the camera as well with our media schools in Ball State. So we have a lot of folks out in Hollywood that would like to bring their skills back and live in Indiana, but be able to kind of film those TV and shows here.
Well, just like the movies, we'd love a happy ending.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to follow up on that. I mean, we have a great school, great great program at Indiana University, Huntington University, Ball State University. And when these kids graduate our universities, there's no jobs here. They have to leave the state of Indiana for these jobs. So the transfer of this credit would bring these companies in to be able to produce right here in Indiana.
We've had more content now than we've ever had, even though I know people go right to this show and pin this on what to watch every week, but the rest of everyone else, everything is under the sun is streaming, so there's a lot of money to be made in that profession right now.
Yeah, absolutely. As we look to the weeks ahead, what legislation, either something you've written, sponsored, co-authored, or other by a colleague, what other pieces of legislation are you interested in following between now and the end of April?
You know, I'm the ranking member of the Health Committee, and I have 3 of those bills, and I think we have some really great ideas that would really help struggling Hoosiers and also put money back in our pockets. The cost of care is too expensive in the state. Those are certainly really important. I mean, I think they'll have the biggest impact on everyday Hoosiers.
Mm-hmm. And Chris, how about you?
Senate Bill 1 is going to be in Ways and Means for the next three weeks probably. So I think the continued diving into what that's going to look like at the end of session and making sure that we can give property tax relief to our constituents, but yet not hurt our schools and local governments. Because again, that tax money does not come to the state of Indiana; it stays local. But also, we need to give relief to our homeowners. So I think as that moves along in the next 3 weeks, and then also just putting a plug out there, I'd love to get a $2 million line item for Turnstone. Turnstone just does such a wonderful job for our community. We were able to do that in 2023. So hopefully, with the revenue forecast looks good in April, and we're able to continue to help them out.
Amen.
And
I have not left every night at the State House, and Chris Judy is still in Ways and Means. So I just want everybody watching that Chris Judy's working hard for you late nights, so just dropping off coffee to this guy over here. So putting in the long hours.
I think I had understood that the February revenue report was somewhat encouraging.
It was.
So could be a trend.
Hopefully.
Well, there you go. I would love to be sure we have time to include this because there is one additional piece of legislation where you almost want to say one of these things is not like the other, and it deals with supplemental cigar sales.
Yes. So a lot of folks are familiar with Rudy's right there by Parkview Field, the Tin Caps play, and what Rudy does sometimes is he'll shut down the street and have a block party there through all the right channels. And I know that right now sometimes we can have it where you possibly could have a beverage in certain areas if you have those right codes and right permits. And this is to be able to sell cigars and have cigars out in the street. I know that they've gotten excise doing their job has stopped them a few times. So we're just trying to allow that for the folks in the cigar industry to be able to sell cigars and charity events and things of that nature, but also maybe enjoy a smoke if you have extend out Rudy's a little bit a few times a year.
It did have that feel of kind of a Dora, but obviously for aromatics.
For aromatics, yes. So it's not all doom and gloom and highbrow bills. Sometimes we have some bills that really think are fun and can also help out the area.
Good common sense legislation.
Amen.
There you go. We have time to sneak this in. This question from Suzanne, who says, you talked about people leaving due to non-competes. What other things are you doing to keep people in Indiana?
Well, I'd say we are continuing to lower our property tax. So it's at 3% now to go to 2.9% next year, then by 2027, 2.95% in 2026, 2.9% in 2027. We've also exempted military pay, and along with the retirement pay from income tax, trying to keep those veterans here and to bring them back home. That's some of the things we've done over the last few years.
We have some of the largest immigration numbers in the Midwest. If you count even up into Minnesota, people are actually moving to Indiana. I think we have one of the top 5 tax climates in the nation. So not only I think that we're keeping folks here, but we have 4 counties in Illinois that would like to succeed and come into Indiana. That sent there was a bill, I believe, for a while in the House that talked about trying to add them. But I think we have a really great story to tell, and I think people are seeing it and they're moving here.
Okay. We have a quick one from Tim, wanting to know how you feel about the new jail and how will that affect, it's being typed even as we speak, and how will that affect property tax?
Well, more of a county local issue. I would tell you that the new jail, I think, needed to happen, right? Where they were at downtown, I don't think could rise anymore. It was costing folks too much. So I think that was a wise thing to do to have that. As far as how that affect property tax, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I think they had that money and bonded at the county level already, I believe, for that facility.
Yeah. And all I can see is that game where you're moving little squares inside a big square. And if you can finally get it to work out, that's called property tax reform.
Yeah. Your taxing district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could teach a class. I like that. Yeah.
I got to master the game first, so I'll work on that. But we're very glad you were here to work with and for us. Our guests this evening, Indiana Republican State Senator Justin Busch, Republican State Representative Chris Judy. And thank you again for being with us.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And for all of us with Primetime, I'm Bruce Haines. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you back here again next week. Have a good night. The preceding program on PBS Fort Wayne was made possible in part by
The Rogers Company has been conducting business in Northeast Indiana since 1944 as Rogers Markets and now as The Rogers Company with commercial property and real estate development. Pleased to support local not-for-profits and PBS Fort Wayne. The Regional Chamber of Northeast Indiana advocates for world-class infrastructure, a competitive business climate, 21st century talent, and rural investment. One region, one voice. NEINadvocates.com. Purdue University Fort Wayne will host Marcus Collins, cultural scholar and professor, Thursday, February 27th at 7:30 as part of the Omnibus Speaker Series, inspiring fresh and diverse thoughts. Details at pfw.edu/omnibus.